Hey folks, Nick here from another BookTube channel. Today, taking a look at Bernie Wrightson, the FPG years. FPG was a trading card company that did two sets of Bernie Wrightson Master of the Macabre trading cards in the early mid-90s. And this is an art book collecting, I believe, all of those pieces. This all of the main pieces, the Frankenstein stuff is not in here, unfortunately, but it does offer high definition, high quality blow-ups of the art from those original playing card sets. This was a Kickstarter book. I know that there is an edition that was published for direct market, but this I bought into the Kickstarter, so this is the Kickstarter version. Came with a nice slipcase cover that it comes in, as well as a few other little pieces of swag. When you open up here, you'll see this is the autographed card limited edition. The card actually isn't in here because I took it out. I have the card set actually as well of all these cards, but I figured why look at the tiny cards when we can look at this beautiful art book with the high quality photos. So I'll show you which of the cards I had gotten when we get to it in the book. But yeah, this is a really awesome book. I love Bernie Wrightson, one of my favorite artists. Obviously created Swamp Thing, who was, you may know as one of my favorite characters of all time. And there is going to be a lot of stuff that you see in here that reminds you of Swamp Thing. There's an introduction by Mike Plug, who is a contemporary of Wrightson, who is famous for being the Man-Thing artist. So there's a debate as to who the better swamp creature is. To me, there is no debate. The Swamp Thing is my guy. We do get a little kind of Frankenstein piece here, but introductions we get some pretty good background information. We get a little picture of Bernie, the man himself, at 1993 San Diego Comic-Con, where we get a little snippet. He lost his badge, so he had to get a replacement one. We get a still from the Little Rascals. Why? Because the Little Rascals have Bernie Wrightson's trading cards on that table there. So that's the preamble, but now we're going to get right into the Series 1 cards, Master of the Macabre. Actually, before that, there is a quick interview with Bernie, just where he talks about working on the set. He explains that he created, I think, about 40 new pieces for this. It may have been more than that. I'll fact check myself and I'll replace it in here. He talks about some of his favorite comic artists like Jack Davis, Graham Engels, obviously like Frank Frazetta. He talks about how he's seen this interview was in the 90s, so he had seen Kelly Jones's work, even though he's not reading comics anymore. He's aware of Kelly Jones, who I think they go on to kind of know each other. Kelly Jones ends up finishing Wrightson's Frankenstein Alive project, where it was his last project before he passed away. He finished before, he died before he could finish it, so Kelly Jones stepped in. He also tells a kind of funny story about how his naturalist friend named Spider and Jim Starlin went on a hike one day to find a rattlesnake den. So they climbed this incredibly sheer cliff, and it was a really dangerous slope, and they crawled like hands and knees on top of this really precarious rocks to get to the top of the cliff. And when they got there, they couldn't find the snakes, and then they realized when they could hear the snakes underneath all of the rocks that they had just climbed on top of. So they never saw a snake, but they rattled them up. They just by crawling on top of where they were currently hiding. But we're going to get into the actual art now. We get the card image, we get the card name, and as well as the flavor text that appears on the back of a trading card. I'm sure you've seen what a trading card's like. And I'm not a real artist or even a fake one, so I'm not going to be too helpful in terms of talking about techniques and stuff that are on display here, except for maybe kind of obvious things. But I really just want to flip through pages and give you an opportunity to see these pieces, in this format. I did mark some things that I thought were pretty interesting. In the first set in particular, Bernie Wrightson includes in the flavor text some technique detail. So in this one, he talks about how the background he had to do really quickly, so he couldn't be careful with it, like around the figures. So he had to go in with bleach and water to clean up the figures after he put in the background, because they would infringe on the actual figures themselves. You are going to see a lot of different techniques on display here. He's using ink brush, he's using watercolors, he uses markers, because he's doing all of his own coloring here. So these are just, fully Wrightson art pieces. Really like this cemetery piece. And you're just going to appreciate the compositions that you see here. You also see he kind of revisits ideas, similar poses, similar constructions. And it's kind of funny to think about, like, oh, this card was maybe like, this was one he did really quickly just to like get it through. Because Bernie Wrightson took, a lot of time on his finished pieces. He's a very, I don't know if he was a perfectionist, but he definitely took his time. So when he talks about like this one here, he did it in an hour and 10 minutes. And yeah, it kind of looks like he did it in an hour and 10 minutes. It was like, okay, I need another card here. I'll just do a big skull. And it looks great. This zombie guy, decaying flesh. He creates really great effects just with the markers. It looks great. He gets great texture and depth. But it's also like, it's just the face. Same thing here, solid drawing. But, when you compare it to his ink stuff here with watercolor, I mean, if you can tell that this one took him a lot longer than this one did here. One thing that I really appreciate and love looking at Wrightson's artwork is when he gets these textures, when he makes something lumpy, it just works so perfectly. That's something that I find just fascinating about art, is the ability just to take the flat plane of the paper and create that feeling of bumpiness. And that's just, you could feel all down these, like this muscular back, or if they're even muscles, it could be like almost like tumorous. And he also gets these effects here in water, where I don't know that there's ever been anybody who's better at like these little pockets than Bernie Wrightson. I mean, we see, and look at here, even better. In this one, we actually get the prelim drawing and the final product, and more of that lumpiness, the warts, the big boils on this guy's face, nasty stuff. And great idea of just like him pushing down on him, and like him trying to push off, but the hand going right through him. Genius stuff. You'll also see this a lot, where if one of these characters has leverage on the other, they're not just like on them, like leaving them flat. They're pushing the head back a little bit. And this actually isn't even as extreme as we'll see some other examples. But you'll see that over and over. And it's a really smart composition from Wrightson to really like sell the leverage visible here. This one, Lazarus Syndrome, is this one here. I marked it because he notes it as a texture experiment with sponges, towels, and steel wool. And this is one of those where when you look at it the first time, you can't see all of the work that goes into it, like on this, particularly here. Like this all just blends really, really well. But if you look really, really closely at it, you can see where he's dabbing at it with sponges, and where it's creating that, almost a lack of focus. Like there's more texture here than here. Like this is a little bit smoother, and he's just dabbing and dabbing, and you could see the effect that it's creating. Another great, fantastic composition as well. The brighter colors of the zombie immediately being the focal point around the kind of muted green and just the slate gray behind him, and of course the black background. Master of color as well as the macabre, this Bernie Wrightson. This is the box art that the cards came in, which is pretty neat. Nice cemetery. This is the piece where all of the flavor text on the back of the cards would be here. So this would have the name of the card and the number, and the flavor text would be here. Some more experiments with markers. He mentions on this one here, the lightness you're seeing, the markers are drying out, which allows the white of the paper to kind of come through a little bit more. So fun, like happy accident, or possibly he knew and he intended it. Pretty cool. These are other ones where it's just like get a card out quickly. You know, I don't have a lot of time today. I can do this real quick. These are the breakdowns of the hologram cards that came in the set, which is pretty neat. Unfortunately, I don't have the holograms. It would be cool to see them side by side, but because of the holographic nature of the cards, he had to do them in segments. So, like, this is the prelim drawing of what the final product will look like. This right here is the top layer, I guess, of like vellum or acetate. The bottom right here is going to be the bottom plane, so the background. And then this is the middle plate here of the actual like figure. And then when you stack those on top of each other, that creates, you know, the hologram effect. So when you turn the card, it looks like it's moving. Got another one here of a werewolf jumping through a window. We get top plane, bottom plane, middle plane. This these zombies coming back, another hologram, and then we just have a really big werewolf. And if you know it's Bernie Wrightson, you're gonna have a lot of werewolves. Dude was an amazing werewolf drawer. This is just the first of many that we're gonna see throughout. More zombies attacking. You'll also notice a lot of motifs, similar ideas that you can kind of see. Like he did it in one drawing, and he was like, "Let me play with that a little bit more in something else." This one, I always think of Adrienne Barbeau. She reminds me of Adrienne Barbeau. This Panthera. But these are some cheesecake drawings that he did for it. You always have to have a little bit of cheesecake. There's even more there. I noted this one because he writes that this one was finished, but it felt flat. It needed some texture, so he spit clear water across the background for a splatter effect. So I guess it was just this flat color before. He spit water on it, and it created a little bit of texture. Just a good example of artists being artists. Really fun. More markers. This is a fun composition, just having the head come over the red sun or moon or whatever. Moon, distant moons. And he does great work with the markers, really. I mean, I prefer the ink work and the watercolors, but this is impressive stuff to do with magic markers. And then we get some dinosaurs. Bernie Wrightson drawing dinosaurs. It's funny because I never thought that he would be so good at, I mean, of course, he'd be good at it, but I would never think of him like wanting to draw dinosaurs. I don't attribute that to him because I don't think of them really as horror. Stephen Bissette, you know, he's a dinosaur guy, and funnily enough, Bissette would go on to draw Swamp Thing after Wrightson. But these are some awesome dinosaurs. That's a great looking T-Rex. It's really cool. And of course, you got the babe riding this one, Theo and Roger. This is a good one. I noted it because he calls out that the top half is a classic triangle composition. The eye is directed towards the creature's face, which it certainly is. And then just the bottom is a solid base to support the triangle. And a lot of these Swamp Thing covers that I've covered in the Swamp Thing read-along follow this similar kind of layout of that triangular composition. This is a really interesting one. I don't know what this is. And he even says he doesn't know what this is. This is one of those pictures that just starts from a blank piece of paper. Then one element suggests another, and I have no idea where it came from or where it's going, and suddenly it's finished. Unbelievable. This is a great one. Another one that's just like the colors are drawing your eye straight to this focal point here. You have a little bit of a spotlight around it as well, like a natural spotlight, and then the black to balance it out, and the deepness of the red of the blood, just to really like throw the cherry on top. Some guns and aliens and stuff. Here's some more of those just like lumpy textures that he's so damn good at, and crazy creature designs that he's so damn good at. This one he calls a tribute to old EC science fiction comics and big bug monster movies. I think, you know, Starship Troopers, but I also think Aliens, and we're going to see a lot more Aliens as well as we move along. More zombies. We get our first kind of almost Swamp Thing. Just a big moss creature. The woods are alive. And here you go. This one's incredible. Moving Day, it's called. This one is fantastic. And this is what, I mean, honestly, if you go back and you look at his original Swamp Thing issues, he doesn't get as too into the detail as like the set will do in his run. Because I think when Wrightson had to work on a monthly comic, he couldn't go into that level of detail. So it's great to see like what it could have been if he had that time. This is fantastic. Just a great use of shadow underneath, just a little bit of branches to break up that shadow, and then the great big arm that just takes up the whole center of the image. Fantastic. More cheesecake. This time, the light around the image is what gets blurred out, and then kind of the darker figure in the middle is what kind of stands out to you. Particularly, I mean, two big reasons to stand out to you. These are, I love this stuff. The interlacing, like the network of branches, nasty, just like in shape-changing alien that can't make up its mind which form to take. So cool. Just like that's Bernie Wrightson drawing The Thing. John Carpenter's The Thing, essentially. This is nightmarish. And actually, I think this is inspired by Evil Dead, because I think there's another interview in here where he's asked about favorite movies of his, and he talks about how he's looking forward to Army of Darkness because he's a big Sam Raimi fan. So I wouldn't be surprised at all if this was inspired by Evil Dead. Great image. Eels jumping out and attacking this guy. Great, just a directionality, everything just boom coming at him. You could feel like this force, like they're really pushing at him, and him being off balance, trying to fight against that. Fantastic composition. This is a really fun one. It's just silly. Kissing a mermaid. Good, lucky guy. What else we got? I like when he does this kind of stuff. Creatures emerging from water. You get these great splash effects that create more just awesome fluidity of motion. That's just terrific. He does it again here. This guy's coming out, or rather, this one's more smoke, but it's got that same effect where it's like whoosh. More of those lumps. Love those lumps. Gotta have those lumps. Little lizard on a pile of skulls. Never hurt anybody. Ugh. This one is yucky. You could just feel how slimy this is because there's a lot of white that's cut in here to create that glistening effect. Ugh. Nasty stuff. Just nasty. A dapper gentleman. Great drapery on the clothing here. Jack the Giant Slayer or something. Looking good. I think he kind of had a similar composition for I think it was a creepy cover or an eerie cover that he did. No, it was a heavy metal cover that I'm thinking of. With, I think it was like a dinosaur that was bleeding out. Creature from the Black Lagoon. And that brings us to the end of the first series, and I marked this one here because this is the first time he calls out that he's affected or influenced by Frank Frazetta. A lot of his earlier drawings was of barbarians facing horrible monsters, and that's definitely something that's going to come back very soon for more in the Series 2 more Macabre set. We do have another interview portion here with him. The only thing that I flagged here was that he talks about how he's been using a brush more these days. Like he started with a brush, then he became a pen guy for a while, and then he went back into a brush because it's easier for him, allows him to get a much freer line. And if you're an artist, you know what that means. I don't. But thought it might be fun information for you to have. But we kick off with maybe my favorite piece. I don't know. This one's awesome. There are a lot of pieces in here that I can call my favorite, but this one, it's called Familiar Face, and you can see why. He can't use the name Swamp Thing, but even the flavor text says not the original, but an incredible simulation, and that is a fantastic not Swamp Thing. Love the way the arms coming across, the hand. Nobody draws fingers. Nobody draws fingers better than Bernie Wrightson. Those things are incredible. And what I like about this one a lot is there's not a ton of variation in the color, but you're still able to very clearly see the figure. A lot of that, I think the eye with the little splash of white in there draws it out. But even without it, just where the shadows are put in, the slightly browner impact of like the moss around him, it just, the figure really pops out, even though it's a similar color to everything else around it. And of course, offset from the sky in the background there. Now, in this set, his flavor text is not as full of information and detail about the technique. It's mostly just fun stuff to set the scene and talk about what's happening in the actual image. Get a werewolf eating this guy. I've always found that the way he's holding the man is a little tender because like just the arms look so big and strong. He's got the paw like gently around his neck, cradling him. Like this is supposed to be a vicious attack, but I think this reads a little bit like he's hugging him. I would maybe get those claws into the skin a little bit, but I don't know. Who am I to judge? I don't know. I don't love this crossing in front of this big wood panel crossing in front of the image. I don't know about that. There are some in this set particular that I feel like Bernie, because this one is all new drawings, all new paintings and stuff. So there were no, in the previous set, there were some existing drawings that he had done that were adapted for the card. This is all new. And I do feel like there are more in here that he was just like, all right, yeah, here's a quick one, done. But these are really nice. I like this composition. The foreground, background of just like the smaller image, bigger image chasing after him. This reminds me of Frazetta. I don't know, the way that these like feet kind of like become nothing. They just kind of fade into the background. Reminds me of that. Also reminds me of like Eric Powell, Mike Mignola, who are also obviously influenced by Frazetta. These werewolves have the strangest faces. Look at how long this guy's face is. And this is another one of those cases where the guy's off balance, but he's not straight. His neck is being bent backward. It adds that extra level of uncomfortableness to that pose. Like he's really being overpowered. That's just something that like Wrightson probably discovered early in his career. Like that's the pose for being taken off balance. And he's just like, do it again. This is a pretty fun one. I like looking at this background. I think this is watercolor. You could see where it kind of like created some weird effects that maybe he wasn't expecting, maybe he was, but I think the ink work here is fantastic as well. This is a pretty famous one, I think. It was used, it's on the slipcase on the back of it. That's Undead. We get the prelim of it and the final product, which is fantastic. Another werewolf with kind of a weird face. Bernie Wrightson playing around with faces, but I'm obsessed with the way he does the hair, the werewolf fur. It would take me my entire life probably to learn like how to do this myself. It's so disheartening and impressive. These is different kinds of like these aren't swamp things, but these are like trees come to life, which is really an interesting idea, interesting design. I love the long creepy fingers. And the backgrounds, I love the like gentle light wash to create like the semblance of more trees and forest behind. This is to me very Frazetta. This particular pose here for this woman with another awesome dinosaur. Who knew he was so good at dinosaurs? These are Frazetta. 100%. This is Frazetta influenced. I mean, how can you draw a big barbarian today and not have it immediately compared to Frank Frazetta? Another guy bursting from the grave. We've seen that before in these cards, but it's like a different angle, different like amount of energy burst from the ground. This one really feels like he's bursting like a projectile out from the grave. Great, dust and just the dirt particles everywhere. More werewolves. This guy's trying to put this guy back in the grave. Or he was trying to grave rob, and he got a little bit of a surprise. Another not Swamp Thing. This is another fantastic image. Beautiful. I also think that in this set in particular, Bernie wanted to play with water. We got two right on top of each other here, where he's playing with water. We'll see it again a little bit later. And great lighting as well on the water. This figure has the lighting presumably from like a moon on top, but also the bottom is shadowed out. Just great. Love the white splash of the water here to create a distinct layer in which the colors of the foreground characters can stand out. Another not Swamp Thing, looking awesome. Similar face to the first one that we saw. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it. Yeah, there. The same eyes. Kind of those glassy white eyes, glassy white blue eyes. Some Frankensteins. There is a separate actual Frankenstein set, a subset that's not included in this, but these are, very obviously some Frankenstein creatures that look great. I think this one's funny because this is an underwater one that he put goggles on the guy, and in all the other underwater ones, he didn't bother with that. He didn't put goggles on it. For some reason, he was like, we're going to put goggles on this one. Great monster, too. Great detail on the monster. Nice. I do think this is one of those instances where I think he did one composition or one pose, and he was like, let me do it again. Because, look, this one here and this one here. They're literally the exact same pose, but one of them's got skin. One of them doesn't. I like this. Here's another one with water. He's playing with the water. These fishermen don't know that the big monster is behind them. I always get a laugh out of that one. The water is fantastic. This one feels very quick to me. This one feels like a deadline one. Gargoyles are great. This is another Frazetta woman. Hands down. More great dinosaurs. I really like the lighting on this one. The lighting of this one almost reminds me of Richard Corbin a little bit. Maybe also the texture as well. But then the woman is a Frazetta. This guy's awesome too. How many of them are awesome? All of them. More water that he's playing with. Ugh. Whenever he does this a lot where there's a lot of faces or things that are molded together that shouldn't be. Always looks awesome. He was fantastic at just knowing where to start the next face and how much to elongate the one of them and just twist them in weird ways. It's another quick one, probably. Both of these, I think. This one's kind of not as interesting as I would like it to be. This guy's being attacked in a cemetery, but only one of them is very clearly dead. I think the other ones are a little too well put together. Could be more grisly. Gross. What even is that? This one, I think Bernie Wrightson watched Aliens and was like, all right, I'll just do 5 or 6 cards about that. These are the first 2 of those. I mean, you could tell, with these kinds of helmets, this kind of machinery with the belt of bullets that's coming out, he had to have watched Aliens recently. The way that the texture on the skin here of the creature very much reminds me of the Xenomorph. This is one of my favorite poses, with the bat is cradling the woman in his wing, and it doesn't hurt that she's naked, but I think that's just a really great image. More of that, just those weird lumpiness, that weird goo, whatever. No one's better at it. Another one. Look at that neck being like pushed down. He's got him off balance, basically riding him. Now that I look at closely at it, how'd they get in that position? That's very strange. He's got the stake through him, and then did he jump on top of him at that point? I don't know. This is a nice one. Like, I wish I could do this one probably as quickly as he did. Like, oh my god. It would take me a year to do this. He probably took him 30 minutes. I think we saw the Frazetta influence. I think this is Wrightson's first kind of attempt at doing the Night Stalker by Frazetta, which is my favorite Frazetta painting. But there's another one later that's even more direct swipe. I think it's just a straight up swipe. Vampires. This is a great one. Just I think the color of the background through the arch creates that contrast against the darkness of the arch. Makes just these focal figures pop a little bit. Having her hair be red also helps. So this is the card that I got. So the Kickstarter that I backed came with an autographed card. Bernie Wrightson autographed card that he'd signed back in the 90s. It's been sitting with the Wrightson estate forever. And of all of these awesome cards that I could have gotten, I get arguably like the most boring one. Like, it's fine. It's just two guys. One of them's got an axe, and they're on a mountain of skulls. But like, I couldn't get like a cool creature design one. Like, oh, just my luck. Like, really, that I would get that one. More werewolves, particularly nasty one. Just ripped the spine out of whatever his prey was. Coming out of this water or just slimy ooze of dissolved flesh. Yuck. Yeah, no, that's no good. That's nasty. Another great werewolf. More great werewolves. It's interesting. The faces are like, this one's got such a human nose. I don't know. He's just playing with stuff. Here's another Aliens one. That's another Aliens one that he was influenced by that movie. This is Night Stalker, 100%. This is a swipe. This is, he just looked at the Night Stalker painting. Was it Night Watcher? No, it's Night Stalker. And was just like, all right, here's my version, because it's like the exact same pose. More. This is another one that's alien. I mean, it's the mouth of the mouth. It's got to be the alien. That's Aliens. More Frazetta influence. This one, you can even see on my little note card here, I wrote Bisley, because this one reminded me of Simon Bisley a little bit. Like, this one struck me as very 90s, very kind of hardcore. I don't know. There's something about it. Maybe I think it might be the hairstyle, honestly. That struck me as Simon Bisley-esque. Not nearly as extreme, but kind of pushing into that direction. And we're getting near the end here. Closing out with a couple werewolves, a couple axe murders. Guy getting taken down by vampires. And that's where we close. So there you go. That is Bernie Wrightson, the FPG Years. I was really satisfied with this when I bought it on this Kickstarter. I probably, honestly, knowing like that I didn't get like a good autographed card that I wanted, I probably could have waited for just the direct market edition and gotten it for a little bit cheaper. But I do think it's pretty cool. I like the slipcase, honestly. The slipcase kind of makes it worth it too. I love a good slipcase. I'm a sucker for that. But yeah, this is available. Like, this isn't just for Kickstarter. If you have a local comic shop near you, this should be available there. If not, have them order it, because it is dope. And if you love Bernie Wrightson, it's a really great way to look at those cards I mean, you could probably get, and you're going to get the set of cards on eBay. I got both sets for, I think, like $10. So have both, and you could keep them side by side and look at them and appreciate them forever. But let me know your thoughts about this book and Bernie Wrightson in the comments below. Thank you for spending some time with me today, but now it's time to get back to reading.